then obviously, you know, he gets caught on tape, you know, saying some derogatory, racist things, and I don't know what you expect. Like, I think people are gonna, you know, they're gonna react, and they're not gonna react in a positive way.
No one expected The Undertaker to break his silence at Hulk Hogan's funeral, but when he finally did, the atmosphere shifted from mourning to absolute shock. His revelations weren't just personal, they tore open decades of hidden tension and secrets. What exactly did The Undertaker say that stunned everyone in attendance? The revelations that said everything. July 24th, 2025. Hulk Hogan died from cardiac arrest at age 71. Within hours, The Undertaker posted on Instagram. The wrestling world has lost a true legend. His contributions to our business are immeasurable, and for that I am appreciative. Thank you, Hulk Hogan. Less than 30 words, over 2.5 million likes within hours, and beneath those simple words lay decades of tension, controversy, and one of wrestling's most complicated relationships. Because 6 months earlier, The Undertaker had said something very different about Hulk Hogan. It was January 6th, 2025, the Netflix premiere of Monday Night Raw at the Intuit Dome in Los Angeles. Hogan appeared to promote his Real American beer brand, but instead of the hero's welcome he might have expected, the 18,000-strong crowd unleashed a torrent of boos. Not polite disagreement, not mild disapproval. Thunderous, sustained, overwhelming rejection. The Undertaker was backstage that night, and when he addressed it on his 6 Feet Under podcast on February 3rd, 2025, he didn't sugarcoat what he'd witnessed.
When I saw him, he was no-selling it and pushing his beer. I didn't see him. I wasn't backstage when he came.
The Undertaker, the dead man, one of wrestling's most respected figures, watched Hulk Hogan get booed out of the building and laughed. The podcast host pressed him, "Did you feel bad for him? Did you want to give him a hug?" The Undertaker's response was brutal in its honesty.
Did you feel bad for him? No.
Well, hey man, I got feelings. I got feelings for people. Like, sometimes in life, things come back.
It was a philosophy of karma, delivered with The Undertaker's characteristic bluntness. He continued, explaining why modern fans had turned against Hogan.
I mean, the fans, they have access now to everything, and they do. And then they get to hear people's interviews, and so, yeah, they kind of feel like they're part of that locker room. And this was somebody that was, you know, regardless of where he's at now, you know, they kind of carry a grudge about it.
He was talking about Hogan's 2015 racism scandal, when leaked audio from a 2007 sex tape revealed him using the N-word repeatedly and expressing disgust about his daughter Brooke dating black men. In the recording, Hogan said, "I am a racist to a point," and used vile language that shattered his carefully cultivated image as an all-American hero. The scandal had cost him everything temporarily. WWE terminated his contract, removed him from their Hall of Fame, scrubbed him from their website. Even after his 2018 reinstatement, the damage was permanent. When members of the New Day, Kofi Kingston, Big E, and Xavier Woods issued a statement about Hogan's return, they made their position clear. Hogan didn't represent their values, and they wouldn't interact with him. But The Undertaker went beyond just the racism. He talked about Hogan's reputation in the locker room, the politics, the manipulation, the refusal to put other wrestlers over. Fans now had access to countless shoot interviews, podcasts, and behind-the-scenes stories. They knew about Jesse Ventura's testimony that Hogan had ratted out his union organizing effort. They'd heard Bret Hart's stories about Hogan refusing to lose to him at King of the Ring. So when The Undertaker watched Hogan get booed at that Raw premiere, when he saw Hogan try to no-sell the crowd's rejection, just like he'd allegedly no-sold injuries and losses throughout his career, he couldn't help but laugh, because it represented something larger, accountability finally catching up with someone who'd spent decades avoiding it. But here's where The Undertaker's tribute becomes so fascinating. Despite everything he'd said on that podcast, despite the laughter, despite the acknowledgement of Hogan's failings, despite the things come back philosophy, when Hogan died 6 months later, The Undertaker's tribute was respectful and measured. His contributions to our business are immeasurable. He elaborated slightly in a follow-up interview. Hogan wasn't just a legend, he was the foundation of everything we built. And on his podcast, he maintained that for what he did for the business, he has to be on the Mount Rushmore. This was the essential tension. How do you acknowledge someone's professional contribution emotions while not erasing their personal failings? How do you honor what someone built while remembering how they treated people along the way? The Undertaker had threaded an almost impossible needle. His tribute focused strictly on Hogan's professional impact, undeniably transformative for wrestling, without making any broader claims about his character or worth as a person. He didn't ask anyone to forgive. He didn't ask anyone to forget. He simply acknowledged a professional truth. Hogan's work in the 1980s and 1990s had helped create the modern wrestling industry. It was the kind of tribute that said everything by saying very little. The absence of words like hero, role model, or inspiration was as loud as what was included. The focus on contributions to our business rather than impact on people's lives was deliberate. Every word was chosen, every word was measured, every word recognized the complexity without trying to resolve it. Because The Undertaker understood something crucial. Hogan's death didn't erase what he'd said in that 2007 tape. It didn't undo the careers he damaged with his backstage politics. It didn't retroactively make him a better person. But it also didn't erase WrestleMania 3, where 93,000 fans watched him body slam Andre the Giant. It didn't erase the Saturday morning cartoons, the vitamins and prayers, the red and yellow that defined an era. It didn't erase his role in making wrestling mainstream. Both truths existed, both truths mattered, and The Undertaker's tribute acknowledged one without pretending the other didn't exist. A 30-year history of mistrust. To understand why The Undertaker's tribute carried such weight, you have to understand the complicated, often contentious relationship between these two men, a relationship that spanned 3 decades and was marked by professional jealousy, personal mistrust, and moments that left lasting scars. Their first major encounter came at Survivor Series 1991 in what was billed as the gravest challenge. The Undertaker was barely a year into his WWE career, still establishing his supernatural deadman character. Hogan was at the absolute height of his power, the company's top star for nearly a decade, the man who had defined what it meant to be a wrestling superstar. The match ended with controversial interference from Ric Flair, who slipped The Undertaker a chair. Undertaker then performed his signature tombstone piledriver on Hogan onto that chair, winning the WWF Championship in what was supposed to be a shocking upset that would elevate the young phenom.
My 1-year anniversary with the company, I wrestled none other than the Golden Goose himself. The star, the moneymaker, the big dude. I'm going to go over. I'm going to win the championship. I'm walking down the hall, just going to my locker room. He goes, "Hey brother, can I talk to you?"
But what happened after the match became the stuff of wrestling legend, and not in a good way.
"I'm really nervous about taking the tombstone. I got this bad neck." I was like, "Look, I promise you, I'll take great care of you. Don't worry about it." So we get into the match, and now it's time for the finish. Finish is where I'm going to tombstone him on a chair.
According to multiple sources, including The Undertaker himself in later shoot interviews, Hogan began complaining backstage that the tombstone had injured his neck.
I've given my kids rougher bumps than I give Hogan. I wrap him up. I've got him. The chair comes down. Boom. As soon as my knees touch. "Oh, brother, you got me." I'm like, oh. I just crippled the Golden Goose. I just hurt Hogan.
He was reportedly furious, visibly upset, concerned about his reputation and his ongoing schedule. The implication was crystal clear. This young upstart, this Undertaker character, had been reckless and had hurt the company's most valuable asset.
So I'm walking back. I get backstage. I was like, "Where's Hogan?" He's in Vince's office. Hogan's laid on the floor. So I'm going over, check on him and apologize and everything else. It took a few days before I actually got to see the footage. His head never touched.
This incident, where Hogan appeared to fabricate or severely exaggerate an injury, left a permanent mark on The Undertaker's view of Hogan. It wasn't just about protecting one's image, it was about throwing a younger wrestler under the bus, potentially damaging his career before it had even truly begun. The Undertaker later described feeling mortified and called the incident disgraceful. The title change was quickly reversed at a special Tuesday in Texas event just days later, with Hogan regaining the championship following more controversial circumstances involving Paul Bearer's urn. The whole affair left a bitter taste. The Undertaker had been used to serve Hogan's narrative. Young guy gets lucky once, established star reclaims what's rightfully his, and then discarded. Their paths would cross again throughout the 1990s, but the next major confrontation came at Judgment Day 2002, where they faced off in an undisputed WWE Championship match. By this point, The Undertaker had evolved multiple times, from the original Deadman to the Ministry of Darkness leader to his current American badass biker persona. He was a veteran, a locker room room leader, someone who had earned his place at the top through years of consistent work. The match was brutal, featuring belt-whipping and hard-hitting spots that felt more personal than professional. Critics panned it as sloppy and poorly executed, with the chemistry that should have existed between two veterans completely absent. The match ended with Undertaker's victory, but behind the scenes, tensions reportedly flared over Hogan's reluctance to put The Undertaker over cleanly. It was the 1991 situation repeating itself. Hogan's need to control his image and protect his legendary status getting in the way of what was best for the business. The Undertaker, who had built a reputation as someone who would do business the right way, reportedly grew increasingly frustrated with Hogan's approach. But the real rupture in their relationship, and in Hogan's standing within the wrestling community, came with the 2015 racism scandal. When audio from a 2007 sex tape leaked during Hogan's legal battle with Gawker Media, it revealed him using the N-word repeatedly and expressing deeply racist views about his daughter Brooke dating black men. The Undertaker, as a respected locker room leader who had always advocated for treating people fairly regardless of background, reportedly supported WWE's decision to terminate Hogan's contract and remove him from the Hall of Fame. According to sources, The Undertaker privately referred to Hogan as a cancer who had ruined too many careers with his backstage politics, and the racist remarks simply confirmed what many had suspected about Hogan's true character. This wasn't just about one leaked tape. In 2008, jailhouse phone calls between Hogan and his son Nick had revealed more racist language. The pattern was undeniable. Behind the red and yellow, behind the say your prayers and eat your vitamins persona, was someone whose private views contradicted everything his public image represented. When Hogan was reinstated to the WWE Hall of Fame in 2018, it was controversial within the locker room. The Undertaker, while not publicly opposing the reinstatement, maintained a professional distance from Hogan. There were no social media posts celebrating Hogan's return, no public statements of support, just silence, which in its own way spoke volumes. And then came that January 2025 Raw Netflix premiere. When Hogan was booed mercilessly by the Los Angeles crowd, The Undertaker watched from backstage. And when he addressed it on his podcast, his comments revealed everything about their relationship. The subtext was clear. Working with Hogan had been a box to check off professionally, not something he'd particularly enjoyed or sought out repeatedly. It was an obligation, a wrestling milestone, nothing more. This was The Undertaker's philosophy. Actions have consequences. Hogan had spent decades cultivating a certain image while behaving very differently behind the scenes, and now, in an era where podcasts and shoot interviews revealed the truth, fans weren't willing to separate the character from the person anymore. But despite all this history, despite the 1991 incident, despite the backstage politics, despite the racism scandal, despite 30 years of professional mistrust, when Hogan died, The Undertaker's tribute focused purely on professional contributions. It was a masterclass in separating personal feelings from professional respect. The Undertaker didn't like Hogan. He didn't trust Hogan. He had watched Hogan damage careers, including potentially his own in those early days. But he could still acknowledge that without Hogan's work in the 1980s, the wrestling industry The Undertaker himself thrived in might not have existed. The Undertaker wasn't alone in his complicated relationship with Hogan. Bret Hart was perhaps Hogan's most vocal critic, with issues dating back to WrestleMania 9th in 1993. Hart claimed that after he lost the championship to Yokozuna, Hogan won it immediately after in an impromptu match, despite promises that Hart would get the belt back at King of the Ring. Those promises never materialized. Hart confronted Hogan, reportedly telling him, "You're not in my league. On behalf of myself, my family, and most of the boys in the dressing room, you can go yourself." In a 2021 interview, Hart said Hogan didn't know a headlock from a headlamp, and when asked directly if he liked Hogan, simply said, "No, I don't."
I think he thought he was the big dog and the king dog in the company, and anybody else, I don't think anybody, I think he had problems with Macho Man or Warrior or whoever else. He was a guy that thought he was everything in wrestling and that everyone else was, we're all backup players to Hulk Hogan, and that's the way he saw it.
Shawn Michaels had his own famous incident at SummerSlam 2005, where he oversold every move during their match, flipping around like a rag doll to mock Hogan for allegedly backing out of a planned 3-match series after using his backstage influence. CM Punk, who never worked with Hogan, still called him out in interviews.
"I think Hogan's a piece of shit, so obviously I'm going to be like Steve Austin."
Jesse Ventura never forgave Hogan for informing on his union organizing attempt. Scott Steiner called him a cancer in wrestling and confronted his wife at an event over Hogan inducting Randy Savage into the Hall of Fame. The list went on, and The Undertaker knew all of it, which made his tribute even more remarkable. He could have stayed silent, or he could have used the moment to settle scores. Instead, he chose a third path, acknowledging professional contributions without endorsing personal character. When legends say goodbye. The Undertaker's tribute was part of a larger wave of responses from the wrestling world, each revealing something different about how wrestlers processed Hogan's complex legacy. Perhaps no tribute was more emotional than Ric Flair's. Speaking to TMZ just minutes after learning of Hogan's death, Flair was visibly shaken, struggling to maintain composure.
People always wanted to paint us as enemies, but we were actually very, very close friends. And we kept up with each other.
Flair emphasized their personal bond, sharing stories that revealed Hogan's capacity for kindness. He also revealed that Hogan had lent him money for his son Reed's rehab treatment, and when Flair tried to repay him, Hogan refused.
My son went to 6 rehabs, and my insurance didn't cover rehab, so Hulk lent me money one time to keep him in rehab and to keep him off life support. So I've never forgotten that. And I went to pay him back, and he said, "You never have to pay me back. I'm here for you."
You never have to pay me back. I'm here for you. For Flair, these personal gestures overshadowed the controversies.
I mean, it's just, everybody wants to take a shot at Hulk, but he doesn't deserve it. People make mistakes. And, who knows how that happened, but...
His tribute was about friendship, loyalty, and the private moments that fans never saw. It was a reminder that Hogan could be generous and supportive, at least to those in his inner circle. Mick Foley's tribute took a different approach. Speaking at Galaxy Con Raleigh, where he was appearing when news broke, Foley acknowledged his complicated history with Hogan.
Well, it was almost shock because he was one of those guys who was larger than life. You just assumed, and he didn't appear to age. So you never thought that the last time you saw Hulk Hogan would be the final time you saw Hulk Hogan.
Foley's tribute focused on Hogan's interactions with sick children, moments where the cameras weren't rolling, where there was nothing to gain professionally, where Hogan's kindness appeared genuine. To me, that's his legacy, Foley said, suggesting that this aspect of Hogan deserved to be remembered alongside everything else. Glenn Kane Jacobs, now mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, shared his perspective as someone who looked up to Hogan.
One of my most fond memories was the first time I ever saw him in person. I was not actually in the ring. It was before I got into wrestling. I was at a WWE show in St. Louis, Missouri at the Checkerdome, and when Hulk Hogan came out, he was in the main event, the roof just blew off the place.
Jacob's tribute emphasized opportunity, how Hogan's success in the 1980s created pathways for future wrestlers, expanded the industry, made it possible for people like himself to have careers. It was a professional acknowledgement similar to The Undertaker's, focusing on impact rather than character. The Rock's tribute was perhaps the most personal. On Instagram, he shared a childhood story about catching Hogan's headband at Madison Square Garden in 1984 and returning it to him. Hogan, touched by the gesture, told the young Jacob's tribute emphasized opportunity, how Hogan's success in the 1980s created pathways for future wrestlers, expanded the industry, made it possible for people like himself to have careers. It was a professional acknowledgement similar to The Undertaker's, focusing on impact rather than character. The Rock's tribute was perhaps the most personal. On Instagram, he shared a childhood story about catching Hogan's headband at Madison Square Garden in 1984 and returning it to him. Hogan, touched by the gesture, told the young Dwayne that it was his last one and let him keep it. "You were shocked and so happy after the match because you told me that was your very last headband, and if it weren't for me, you'd have no way of getting that exact one made again," The Rock wrote. It was a tribute about inspiration, about how Hogan had influenced a child who would grow up to become one of wrestling's biggest stars. The Rock described their iconic WrestleMania X8 match in 2002 as a pivotal moment in his career, calling Hogan a childhood hero to millions, including myself. Michael Cole, WWE's longtime commentator, addressed Hogan's passing on SportsCenter.
Hulk Hogan and Vince McMahon created sports entertainment. There is a reason that Netflix and Peacock and USA Network are bringing our shows on a weekly basis because of what they created back in the 1980s, taking this small regional promotion and turning it into this global juggernaut.
Cole's tribute was historical, contextual, focusing on Hogan's role in transforming wrestling from a regional attraction into a global phenomenon. It was the broadcaster's perspective, acknowledging impact without getting into personal relationships or controversies. Sergeant Slaughter, Hogan's former rival, took a different tone on SportsCenter.
And we were on opposite aisles, and he says out of the side of his mouth, "Hey, good to see you back." And I side of my mouth, I said, "Good to be back." He said, I told Vince I wanted you back. I said, what? What? And he said, yeah, I told Vince to bring it back.
Slaughter's tribute focused on their professional collaboration at WrestleMania 7, acknowledging Hogan's drawing power and star quality. But notably, he admitted they weren't close personally. I really didn't know Terry Boy that well. It was an honest assessment that contrasted with some of the more effusive tributes. But not everyone mourned. The black wrestling community was divided, with many feeling no obligation to mourn someone who had expressed such contempt for them. Kazim Famuyid, a black wrestling enthusiast and co-host of the Ringer Wrestling Show, articulated the conflict many black fans felt. You never really got the feeling that Hulk Hogan truly felt remorse. He described the irreconcilable contradiction of loving Hogan as a childhood hero while knowing about his racist remarks. On Black Twitter, reactions were often harsh. Political commentator Roland Martin posted a meme highlighting Hogan's racist remarks, captioning it "Same guy" alongside white conservatives' tributes. The message was pointed. While some mourned a hero, others couldn't forget the harm. O'Shea Jackson Jr., Ice Cube's son, explained why he'd been one of those booing Hogan at the Raw Netflix premiere.
Why? Hating.
Okay.
The racism, bro.
Yeah.
It's just hard to forget how detailed that rant was. And if you look up his rant, it's very detailed. And, I get a lot of people online who are like, oh, well, he would be mad if he found out about that whole generation. Yeah, well, when I find out, I'll be mad. But like right now, yeah, bro, bringing them out here, what'd you think was going to happen?
This divide illustrated something profound about Hogan's legacy. Different communities had entirely different relationships with him. For some, he was a childhood hero whose flaws could be set aside. For others, his racism was so explicit, so detailed, that it overshadowed everything else. WWE itself issued a carefully worded corporate statement. WWE is saddened to learn WWE Hall of Famer Hulk Hogan has passed away. One of pop culture's most recognizable figures, Hogan helped WWE achieve global recognition in the 1980s. WWE extends its condolences to Hogan's family, friends, and fans. Vince McMahon, the man who'd built Hogan into a megastar, went further, calling him the greatest WWE superstar of all time and praising his grit and unbridled thirst for success. Triple H described him as the archetype of what it meant to be a superstar and noted that there was no one like the Hulkster, and there very well may never be another. The show featured an 8-minute video package on the July 25th, 2025 SmackDown that incorporated The Undertaker's voiceover about Hogan's immeasurable contributions, along with rare behind-the-scenes footage and match highlights. It was carefully crafted, acknowledging greatness without making Hogan into something he wasn't. What made The Undertaker's approach so remarkable was how it existed in the middle of all these varying responses. Ric Flair wept and emphasized personal friendship. Mick Foley focused on Hogan's work with sick children. Michael Cole provided historical context. Black Twitter reminded everyone of the racism. And through it all, The Undertaker's tribute remained consistent. Professional acknowledgement without personal endorsement. He never claimed Hogan was a good person. He never asked anyone to forgive or forget. He never pretended the controversies didn't exist. He simply stated a truth that couldn't be denied. Hogan's work in the 1980s had helped build the modern wrestling industry. It was a masterclass in honoring professional contributions while maintaining moral clarity. The Undertaker could acknowledge that without Hogan's breakthrough in the 1980s, without the mainstream success of Hulkamania, without the first WrestleMania, without the crossover into Hollywood, wrestling might have remained a regional attraction rather than becoming a global phenomenon. But acknowledging that reality didn't require pretending Hogan was something he wasn't. It didn't require excusing the racism. It didn't require ignoring the backstage politics. It didn't require forgetting the careers damaged by Hogan's ego. The lesson was this: human beings are complicated. They can do significant good in one arena while causing real harm in another. And death doesn't erase either reality. It simply ends the person's ability to add to either column. Hulk Hogan helped build an industry. He also said racist things on tape. He inspired millions of children. He also damaged careers through backstage politics. He made wrestling mainstream. He also betrayed people who trusted him. All of it was true. All of it mattered. And The Undertaker's tribute acknowledged one set of truths without pretending the others didn't exist. That's perhaps the most mature way to process complicated legacies, not by choosing one side or the other, not by sanctifying or demonizing, but by acknowledging the fullness of who someone was and what they did, for better and worse. And in its honesty, it was perhaps the most respectful tribute of all, because it treated Hogan as what he was, a complicated human being whose professional achievements were undeniable and whose personal failings were equally undeniable. Neither erased the other. Neither made the other matter less. That was The Undertaker's final lesson about Hulk Hogan. You can acknowledge someone's work without endorsing their character. You can respect what someone built without pretending they were a good person. You can mourn the loss of an important figure without pretending the harm they caused didn't happen. His contributions to our business are immeasurable. Full stop. Nothing more needed to be said. Like this video? Click on the card showing on your screen for more.